Okay, so we have the checkpoints working and showing the correct time. If I go to play here, you can see that I can hit these. We show the correct time, and we can only hit them once after they've been activated because of the logic we put in there. But the problem is that we can still hit them out of order, and so that doesn't really follow the game design for this. The game design is that you need to hit the activated one and then go through the obstacle course hitting them in the correct order, but that's not the case right now. So we need to add that game logic to the game. And where I want that game logic to actually occur is I want it to occur in game main. So we're going to hold a list of all of these checkpoints in the game in game main, so I don't have to hold them in every individual checkpoint to see what's going on. Game main is going to kind of control all of the logic for the game. So to do that, let's go to game main's diagram, and I'm going to add a new variable in here. And this is going to be a different type of variable because I have to hold multiple checkpoints in here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a game object variable like I normally would because these are game objects and I need to hold references to all of them. And I'm going to call it checkpoint CP array. But I'm going to hit this button next to it, and this is what makes it an array. It'll make it able to hold multiple variables of that type. So you can see that this looks a little bit different than the other variables there. It says array size. I have 4 checkpoints, so I'm going to make this 4. And after I do that, I can drop this down, and you can see that this is going to hold four game objects in here. And if I go back to the scene, you can see here's 1, 2, 3, 4. They are named a little strangely, so and out of order in the scene here, but this is how I got the scene, so I just left it the way it was. Checkpoint circle L2, L3 is the next one, L4, and then there's a short CPL3 abbreviated right here. But these are the 4 checkpoints that I have in here, but I want them in order in my array, so 2, 3, 4, and then little 4 here. So if I click back to my game object, or my main game object, I'm going to fill these in the correct order. The first one was 2, the second one is 3, the next one is 4 with the long name, and the last one is 4 with the short name. So these are now in order, and I want to not be able to collide with them until I've activated them correctly. So I'm going to go into the checkpoint prefab down here so it propagates to all of these, and I'm going to add an activation process for this, and I'm just going to make a function to activate them so that I can call this function in game main. I'm going to click on the events, and I'm going to make my own custom function, and I'm going to call this activate. And it's not going to require any input or any returns because I know the variables I'm working with in here. Create this function activate. And what I want to do is I need to know if this is activated. So activated can be true or false. So I'm going to use a bool, and I'm going to say is activated. Create that variable and keep it at false. But when I activate it, I want this variable is activated to become true. So I'm going to add it to graph. I'm going to assign bool, and I'm going to turn it into true. I'm going to assign it to true when that happens. And the next thing I want it to do when it's activated is I want it to look like it's activated, because right now you can see when we play the game all of these are gray, and when I hit them they look like they're checked, but they don't look like they're ready to be checked. So I want an animation that makes it ready to be checked. So in my checkpoint, when it's activated, tell it it is activated and ready to go. But I also want the animator, which I set up before, to play a different animation when it's activated. So play state name, and if I go look in the animator state name for this, the state I wanted was, I want checkpoint pulse. Inactive is gray, and checked is green, and checkpoint pulse gives it this kind of blue thing going on there. I have to spell it correctly. Checkpoint pulse. is what I want for this. And now, since I have this is activated, I have to make sure these can't be touched unless is activated is true. So on trigger enter, when I say, can you do the things that you want to do, I have to add another check in here. And so I'm going to, well, I'll get it this way. Variables prefabs is activated is the one I want. And I'm going to check to see, are you true? If. Then hook through this. Now this is going to look like it's going to break our entire game we have here, because now all of these are false, activated false to begin with. So when I play, since that's not activated, I can't actually hit any of these anymore. Well, let's just get the first one working so that we can do this, and then we'll progress by when I hit this one, I'll activate this one. And I'm going to do that in game main because I want game main to hold all the logic for this. So when game main starts up, I actually have this here already. I'm going to delete all this. When game main starts up, I want it to say checkpoint 0 in my array. I want you to activate yourself. So to do that, I'm going to have to hold something that understands the checkpoints in here. So I need an int. And I'm going to call this current CP, current checkpoint. And it's set to 0, which is good because this 0, you can see there's 4 things in here, but 0, 1, 2, 3, this is the array index of them. It starts at 0, not at 1. So I'm going to start at what the current is, and that will be this one. To do that, I need to get my variable, my CP array, and you can see that it looks different than the other variables because it has this stack to it, and you see it has different things. This means it holds multiple things and it's an array. And I need to get the index at that array, get element index, just drag off, and the index I want is 0. I could put current CP in here because it is currently set at 0. And so I'll just do that. But I know I want 0, the first one, to happen here. And what I want to do off this is I want to get a component. And the component I want, remember I have to hook these up for them to work. All of these executes. Component I want is a glyph behavior. And this glyph behavior is, the one that I want is off of the current checkpoint, because this is holding checkpoint game objects, which are these. And you can see the game object over here. These are all the components that it holds. It holds a glyph behavior, so I want this one off of that. So if I'm going to make if I just drag off of this glyph behavior, it doesn't know what type I want because I haven't filled it in. So I kind of have to tell it which one I want. So I'm going to make a variable called glyph behavior in here. And I'm going to call it current CP behavior. And I can bring this in here and add to that and hook this up. I am still not going to get the things that I want here because it doesn't know what type of behavior this is. It doesn't know that it actually is this type of thing. So to get the variables off of this, or the functions, and I actually want to call a function here, I have to take the prefab, or I could do the one in here, but if it's safer and more consistent to do the prefab. And now that it knows that this is looking for this type of glyph behavior, I can go back here and I can say that, and it's going to pop up all of the variables in that and all the functions. Now the function I want is activate. So you can see I made a function in my checkpoint. Checkpoint here made this activate function that says you are now activated, set your bool to true, and make it look like you're activated. And then in game main, when it starts, I say get all the checkpoints, find the current one that we're on, which is 0, find its component, tell it that it's a checkpoint glyph behavior, and then call its activate function. And I should see that when this starts, this now has that pulse to it. If I hit it, it does its on trigger enter. Now none of these have been activated yet. So now we have to go through and do the logic for saying, when I hit this one, activate the next one. And that's quite easy because they're all in a list right here. So since this current CP is 0, I need to make a function that's going to allow me to increase this and kind of do the same thing that I'm doing right here, except increase the amount for this. So I'm going to make a function in game main that does that. Function, and I'm going to call it advance CP. And it doesn't need any inputs and outputs because I have all the information I need here. Advance CP. All right, so what's the first thing I want to do? Well, the first thing I want to do is add 1 to the current CP so we know what index we want to go to. Add 1 plus add int 1. And I want to safeguard here because you'll see that this is 0, 1, 2, and 3. And I can never go past 3 or it's going to give me an error. So when I add 1 to this, I want to clamp the value that can actually come out of here. So I'm going to clamp this to only valid values. So it can start at 0, but it can't go past 3, because 3 would be 4. There's nothing there for it. But to make this a little bit more robust, I'm going to grab this variable, make it a little bit more elegant, and I'm going to say, hey, array, how long are you? How many things do you have in you? And this is going to say, I have 4 things. My array size is 4, so this length is going to return 4. Now, I'm not allowed to have 4. I'm only allowed to have 3 since this started at 0. Index 3 is the last one, so I actually have to subtract 1 from this. Subtract. And now, that is the max. The min it can be is 0. The max it can be is the length of the array minus 1. And I still have to set this to my current CP because it was not set yet, and it will not continue to work unless I actually fill this in and make it what the return value was of this. So now I have the safe current CP here, and I need to tell it, I need to do what I did in start here. I need to say, get the element index of this, right click, main, get element at index, hook it up. The index I want now is this. As it added 1, it's going to give me the new one. And I have to do the same process here. I have to say get component, tell it the component that I want, which is a glyph behavior. Set it to this glyph behavior because this is the one that knows what types of toys it has to play with because I drug that in there. And then off of this glyph behavior, I want to call activate. And when I actually did this on the game main here instead of in the prefab because I needed to add to this game main these scene objects. Prefabs do not hold access to scene objects, but you'll see this will start to slow down a little bit if I'm changing the instance and not the prefab. If you just hit apply, that will actually make it go back to working pretty well, and it'll tell this game main this is what you wanted to do. But you can see these are all none because they don't hold, this doesn't hold a reference to these objects because it doesn't know what scene it's going to be in. And this one does know what scene it's going to be in. So if you see some slowdown, we're working on it, and you just have to take the instance of the prefab and apply it, and that will go away. But we should, and I know that there's a lot of jumping around that's happening here, but what's happening is on start, it's getting the current checkpoint, getting its behavior, and then I had to make a behavior variable and drag in the prefab for it to tell it what variables and functions I could get, and I wanted the function activate because the checkpoint has an activate function which says you are now ready to be interacted with, and please play the correct I'm ready to be interacted with thing. On trigger enter, I now check to see if you are activated and you can be worked with. And then in-game object, or game main, I have an advanced, which I did not spell correctly. Sorry. I can probably rename that. Click rename advance. I might have spelled it correctly. Advanced CP for this, and I'm going to apply that also so the prefab gets it. And now, this still is not going to work because we are not telling it that when we hit the on trigger enter, we are not telling it to advance, telling the game object to advance its current checkpoint. So I've already filled in a game object, a game main behavior here. We did that in start, so this has access to game main. And I'm just going to call its advanced CP here. So we're dealing with functions here. Game main calls activate from the current checkpoint that it's at, and then the checkpoint, when you touch it, tells game main advance to the next one so that I can mess with that one. Hopefully this works. That one's advanced. Now this one's advanced. Now this one's advanced. And you can see that this one now will become ready to be hit. And it didn't hit because I must have some logic that is stopping me from doing that. So let's check my logic in my game main. And I imagine it's where I set up advanced CP. And here. This, and it did not, when it was advanced, it did not call this. So the min and the max is clamped. And I'm going to have to fix the logic. I'm going to fix the logic for this, and I'm going to show it to you, the fix, in the next video. So we're going to wrap this up. It works for the most part. I'm messing something up right here, which I will show you the solution for in the next video, when we'll get these things spinning and we'll get some damage going on in here. This should just turn green. The only problem is it's just not turning green. But then this will be closed, and as you hit this last one, this will open up, which will allow you to come to the end, where we'll calculate all your time up and show you what your best time was.